as you sang of a blind poet, John Milton, who wrote a sonnet. A sonnet is a 14-line poem with a summary couplet right at the end. And he couldn't see. He'd just gone blind. And I suppose he was contemplating the difficulty of blindness. And he was a Christian. And so he had this desire to serve the Lord. And he wrote in this sonnet, "When I consider how my light is spent, ere half my days in this dark world and wide, and that one talent which is death to hide, lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent to serve therewith my Maker and present my true account, lest he returning chide. Doth God exact day labour light denied? I fondly asked, but patience to prevent that murmur soon replied." And then I've forgotten the next line, I think. But it ends up with, "They also serve who only stand and wait." And that is a bit of the theme that I want to take this morning. There is in Christian living a time for waiting, as well as a time for action. We were reminded of another blind poet last week, and he was probably a bit more of our ilk, George Matheson, who, in the midst of his blindness, said, "I give thee back the life I owe, that in thine ocean depths its flow may richer, fuller be." And it really doesn't matter where we've arrived at in life, so long as we know Jesus, and so long as we want to worship him. We can give what we have, and it will always be benefited, both for us and for those who are the recipients of what we give, when we give it to God first. I give thee back the life I owe, that in thine ocean depths its flow may richer, fuller be. I'm sort of changing horses a little bit midstream. We've been talking about Peter's instruction to add to our faith the various things, and I do intend to return to that message later, probably after the AGM. But this month is the month of the annual general meeting. It's not our financial end of the year. Our financial end of the year is in December the 30th, yeah. Is it 30 days of September, April? Yeah, okay. Anyway, the end of December. But the financial year for the world, when they think of budgets and all the rest of it, it's good that we don't have budgets, isn't it, in our fellowship. I think there have been movements to try and incorporate a budget, but so far we've managed to hold it at bay. We walk by faith, not by sight. However, the end of this month we will have our annual general meeting, and we have at the eldership level and in the management team level struggled with some of the things of what to do this year. And at last we have come to some conclusion. And so the annual general meeting, June the 27th. And what I want to do in the 2 sessions that I have between now and the annual general meeting is to present what I believe is God's word to us at this time. And I think it's in line with all that's been going on here this morning. Psalm 46. Let's read Psalm 46, shall we? I mean, we've had some marvelous psalms read to us this morning, and this is also a wonderful psalm. It is said to be Luther's psalm, for when he was in the midst of his reforming work and feeling the pressures of the opposition, he would get his friends and associates around him and say, come on, let's sing Psalm 46. And they would strike out and sing it, like we did try last Sunday, I think, Lance. And you made a comment that we had the wrong words, but I thought those words were great. And I think they were in line with Martin Luther and what his sentiments would be. The verse particularly is verse 10. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob, notice that, not the God of Israel, but the God of Jacob, the very human Jacob, who was prone to failure, who was in fact at times involved in some intrigue to try and get what he didn't really own from his brother, although he's never condemned for it, because it revealed a passion for the things of God as opposed to the things of man. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Think on these things. Right, let's read Psalm 46. It says a song upon Alamoth, and it's not absolutely certain what that means. It could have referred to the instruments that were used when they were singing the song, and they would have been of a high-pitched sound, or it could refer to the voices that sang, the young ladies of Israel, who went out with their timbrels and dances and with their shrill voices, and that is what this word actually means, a song upon Alamoth. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore will we not fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though the waters thereof roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with the swelling thereof. Think on these things. Selah. There is a river, the streams whereof shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacles of the Most High. God is in the midst of her, that is the city. She shall not be moved. Jerusalem shall not be moved. God shall help her, and that right early. The heathen raged, the kingdoms were moved. He uttered his voice, the earth melted. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Selah, think on these things. Come, behold the works of the Lord, what desolations he hath made in the earth. He maketh wars to cease unto the ends of the earth. He breaketh the bow and cutteth the spear in sunder. He burneth the chariot in the fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the Gentiles or the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Selah. So amazing things are happening in the world today. With the opening of our borders to the various nationalities of the world, we have created a problem. Not a problem in allowing the nationalities in, but a problem in allowing them to come in with their idols, their idolatry. I don't know what quite is happening, but I get up every night several times. And as I go into the bathroom, I can hear what sounds to me like music. And I think it's coming from the, what do they call it? The mosque up the hill from us. I can't decipher what they're singing. It sounds like singing to me. We wondered this morning whether it was the roadworks, but I think there is a slight difference in the noise. But it's something new. I mean, our area seems to be very, very much moving in the direction of Islam. So many people of that background, and now a mosque up the road, and then the big center just down the road from us. Now, of course, we must not be racist, and certainly I'm not racist, but I do recognize the profound effect of idol worship going on in our midst. And it's not only, Islam. I mean, there is idol worship in so-called Christianity. Roman Catholicism is laced with idolatry. So it's not just, one against the other. But in the midst of all of this, and the pressures and the dangers and the threats, there's no better psalm that we can turn to than Psalm 46. So Luther's psalm is my psalm and your psalm. It is a wonderful, wonderful song. And this is really what is our consideration as we approach our annual general meeting. As I said, we were struggling with what to do. And then, I felt, and I think the other brothers have gone with me on this, that we should again make no great changes. We should simply be still and recognize that God is God. Exodus 14:13 says, "Fear not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show to you today." And that is what I want to pick up in the second message before our annual general meeting. And compare it with Mark 4:39, where it says, "And Jesus arose and rebuked the wind and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm." That was literal, but it can be very spiritual as far as we're concerned, in the midst of turmoil and all that goes on in family life, in our own personal lives with regard to sickness and with regard to deaths, which we're very conscious of again from last year about this time, when we lost several of our, 3 of our brothers around about this time. Sickness usually often leads to death, serious sickness, and there are a number among us who are seriously sick. But the Lord is well able to do, and I think with all of us there is a sense of putting ourselves at the disposal of God and in the hands of God. So message today is be still and know that God is God. The next message will be fear not. Stand still. I looked up that expression, that phrase, stand still, and found that it was 5 times repeated in the Old Testament. Exodus 14 verse 13 is the first time. You remember the setting? Pharaoh is behind the children of Israel, chasing them to bring them back into bondage and slavery. They've come to an impasse. They're surrounded by hills on the left and the right, and in front of them is the Red Sea. And God says that ridiculous thing, stand still. And you will see the salvation of the Lord. The second time it appears, but the first lesson, the first lesson that we learn from that, Exodus 14 verse 13, is that when you reach an impasse, and we do, all of us do. Can you see it all right, or is it a bit unclear? Okay, we're trying to work through this, so we're getting. I thought green was all right. All right. Actually, let me tell you something. I'm absolutely stupid with IT and PowerPoints and all that, and I'm dependent on others. And I happened to make a comment to someone who, at this stage, will remain nameless. But he reminded me of something that Albert Einstein said, because I said, with all these changes that are going on IT, I said, I can't get it. I am stupid. And he said that Albert Einstein once remarked that if a fish was trying to climb a tree, he would all his lifetime consider himself to be stupid. So I don't know if he was trying to say that I was a fish. Anyway, I still think I'm stupid. So I'm sorry for putting green in there. But I was instructed that it would be all right. I thought. No. Blue is okay, all right. Here it is. So when you reach an impasse, stand still and wait. The New Testament principle, of course, which we'll look at a bit more next week, is if you cannot do anything of faith, then it's sin if you go forward. Now, that's pretty challenging, isn't it? Then the second time is when you need divine direction, stand still and hear God speak. It's an interesting incident, which we'll give you the reference for next week, where Moses wasn't sure what to do with regard to a person who was not involved in the Passover feast. And so he said, stand still and I will inquire of the Lord. There are times in our lives when we're not sure what to do. At those times we need to stand still and let God speak and hear when he does speak. Usually, of course, in our setting, he speaks out of his word, never contrary to his word. The third time in the Old Testament was when the children of Israel were facing Jordan. And Moses instructed the priests to go into the river and stand still. Leaders must not fear the flood. There's always a flood. The true leaders do not fear the flood. They stand still. They don't flap around or flop around in water. They stand still. The fourth was in the time of failure, when the children of Israel voted for a king. And Samuel protested and told them that they had done the wrong thing. But he said, stand still and I will inquire of the Lord. And he reminded them as a result of that of God's faithfulness, goodness and mercy in general and personal history. And when we have engaged in some act which constitutes a failure, it's a wonderful thing to stand still and think about God's mercy, God's faithfulness, God's goodness. The fifth time relates to Job. It's in Job 37:14. Now, these are not in chronological order, of course. They are in the order in which they appear in our Bibles. Job 37, verse 14. Hearken unto this, O Job. Stand still and consider the wondrous works of God. Stand still in order to contemplate the wonders and greatness of God in God's universe. We had a marvelous message from our brother Colin a few Sunday nights ago. Those of you who missed it, you ought to try and get the DVD. I think we managed to get the graphics on the DVD. I hope so. And it really was thrilling to consider the marvels of the universe, and then the fact that God holds all of that in his hand. And he can hold us in his hand. So stand still in order to contemplate the wonders and greatness of God in God's universe. Our annual general meeting theme is holding steady. Jesus stood in the boat. Hello, ship ahoy. Are you ready? He stands in the boat and he speaks calm. Psalm 46. Let's have a bit of a look at this wonderful psalm, which is called Luther's Psalm. C.H. Spurgeon says, and he makes a comment. You know what C.H. Spurgeon is like. He makes a comment on just about every word, and he always brings something delightful out. Title, he says, to the chief musician, he who could sing other psalms so well was fitly entrusted with this noble ode. Trifles may be left to commoner songsters, but the most skillful musician in Israel must be charged with the due performance of this song, with the most harmonious voices and choicest music. That would leave me out. For the sons of Korah, one alone, he says, cannot fulfill the praise. There must be picked choristers under him, whose joyful privilege it shall be to celebrate the service of song in the house of the Lord. The subject, happen what may, the Lord's people are happy and secure. This is the doctrine of the psalm, and it might, to help our memories, be called the Song of Holy Confidence, were it not for the great Reformer's love for this soul-stirring hymn. It will probably be best remembered as Luther's Psalm. The division, it is divided by inspired authority into 3 parts, each of which ends with Selah. So, verses 1 to 3. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore will we not fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though the waters thereof roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with the swelling thereof. Think of that. This compares with Psalm 18, verse 2, where we read, the Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my strength, in whom I will trust, my buckler and the horn of my salvation, and my tower, high tower. Barnes says of this, the Lord is my rock. The idea in this expression and in the subsequent parts of the description is that he owed his safety entirely to God. He had been unto him as a rock, a tower, a buckler, etc. That is, he had derived from God the protection which a rock, a tower, a citadel, a buckler furnished to those who depended on them, or which they were designed to secure. The word rock here has reference to the fact that in times of danger, a lofty rock would be sought as a place of safety, or that men would fly to it to escape from their enemies. Such rocks abound in the land of Israel, and by the fact that they are elevated and difficult of access, or by the fact that those who fled to them could find shelter behind their projecting crags, or for the fact that they could find security in their deep and dark caverns. They became places of refuge in times of danger, and protection was often found there when it could not be found in the plains below. And he gives some comparative references. Judges 6 verse 2 says, "And the hand of Midian prevailed against Israel, and because of the Midianites the children of Israel made them dens which are in the mountains and caves and strongholds." Isn't it amazing how God uses everything? And those dens and caves and strongholds that Israel established to protect them then became a means of their protection throughout their history, so that they were able to say, "The Lord is my rock." Psalm 27:5, "For in the time of trouble he shall hide me in his pavilion. In the secret of his tabernacle shall he hide me. He shall set me up upon a rock." You know the origin of that great hymn, "Rock of Ages" by Toplady. He was out walking when a storm broke out. He was from Bristol, and he was walking in the Cheddar Gorge. And because of the storm, he sought refuge in the cleft of a rock. And as the storm was passing over, he was inspired to write that great hymn, which I hope we'll never lose. "Rock of ages, cleft for me, let me hide myself in thee. Let the water and the blood which from thy riven side which flowed be of sin, the double cure, cleanse me from its guilt and power. In the time of trouble, storm, he shall hide me in his pavilion, in the secret of his tabernacle." I think the word has been mentioned this morning that we are here and we want God to tabernacle among us. "Shall he hide me? He shall set me up upon a rock." Psalm 61, 1 and 2. "Hear my cry, O God, attend unto my prayer. From the end of the earth will I cry unto thee. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I." During that marvelous time of music that passed through the charismatic and Pentecostal world, they turned that into a song. "Hear my cry, O God, attend unto my prayer." And if you go to New Zealand and you go down to the bluff, they will say to you, "That's the ends of the earth." From the ends of the earth shall we cry unto you. Luther's psalm, or the Song of Holy Confidence. You can imagine the setting as they were under attack, under duress. And friends, I don't suppose we'll ever fully appreciate what Martin Luther did. And there are those in our day and generation who think themselves very clever and criticize these great men. I know they were not perfect, but then we're not perfect either. But my, oh my, what Martin Luther had to face. And with the pressures of the established church against him, really threatening his life. And it must have been quite a thing for him, being brought up as a priest and then deciding to marry. But he was breaking the mold. He was breaking the tradition. I'm sure he was in love with his wife, and I haven't heard anything to the contrary. But it must have been quite a thing for him, as one brought up as a priest, to suddenly break that tradition. And so with all of these pressures from within and from without, he would say to his men when they were feeling somewhat discouraged, Let me read this. This psalm has been called Luther's psalm. It was that which he was accustomed to sing in trouble, when the times were dark, when the enemies of truth appeared to triumph, when disaster seemed to come over the cause in which he was engaged, and the friends of the Reformation were dispirited, disheartened, and sad. He was accustomed to say to his fellow laborers, "Come, let us sing the 46th Psalm." That sounds exciting. Gave him great encouragement. So, it's a psalm of holy confidence. The word refuge is used here. The Authorized Version translates it, or renders it, refuge 15 times, shelter twice, hope twice, and trust once. I'll read it, you can't. Refuge means a shelter. It was a shelter from the storm or from rain. It was a shelter from danger. But it was also a shelter from falsehood. And I think that applies in our setting. Oh, the falsity that's invaded the church. The latest that we hear, and I suppose it has to be checked out, is that there is an amalgamation taking place between Kenneth Copeland and the Pope. Well, I guess it had to be, didn't it? The falsity that is spreading even among those who we have been associated with. Where the Assemblies of God in America has formed an alliance with the Mormons. Yes. Not just an association in the sense of going to a meeting, but a formal link. God is our refuge. In the midst of falsehood. And our strength. The word is rendered strength 60 times, 17 strong, power 11, might 2. So you get the idea. He is a mighty tower to us. He is a stronghold. It means might or strength in a material or physical sense, and we need it. But it means it also in a personal or social or political sense. Politics cannot be relied upon. Those who call the one side liars are themselves liars. It's laced with lies. Human politics will never solve anything. And even though people do try to do their best, there will always be the critics. But in the midst of personal or social or political turmoil, God is our strength. I'm not looking to the Liberal Party or the Labour Party or to, what's his name, Palmer? Or whoever, as a solution to Australia's problems. God is our refuge. The Lord is our refuge. And whether He intervenes or not is not the issue. The fact is that we keep looking to Him. Like we do with regard to the second coming of Jesus. It's presented in the New Testament as something which can happen at any moment. The fact that it hasn't doesn't change the promise. We are living possibly in the time of its happening, but I will cling tenaciously to the idea that it can happen at any time. It's known as the imminence of the return of Jesus Christ. And that's the way I see it presented. Not that it will happen at any time, but that it could happen. That's what that word means, imminence. It could happen at any time. And that is why the Bible tells us that we should be ready, that we should be looking. And the same thing with regard to God's intervention in the affairs of men. He is our help. It means succor, assistance, one who helps. Well, you've got the idea there. And how does that apply in the end times? Let me look for a moment with you, and we've read this many times, to Luke chapter 21, which is the parallel of Matthew chapter 24, though Matthew 24 gives you more detail. But Luke chapter 21, and look what it says from verse 17. And you shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. But there shall not a hair of your head perish. Now, how do you apply that in the context of the people who are losing their lives, and not only losing a hair of their head, but their heads? How do you apply it? Well, you can only apply it in the context of the fact that it is eternity in view, not time. As far as God is concerned, we are made for eternity. And as far as He is concerned, not a hair of our eternal heads will perish. In your patience, possess your souls. And when you see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. There's been a fight over who owns the upper room. And the Roman Catholic Church seems to be making their claim. And the Jewish lobby says, no, it's ours. Well, really, who does it belong to? The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. The sea and all that dwells therein. It's really very incidental who will have possession of it for a period of time. Although, of course, from the Scriptures, I would say it belongs to Israel. But that's by the way. God is our refuge and help. When you see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Then let them which are at Judea flee to the mountains. This has happened in history, but it's going to happen again. Them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out. Let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, to them that give suck. I don't think this is pronouncing a curse on lady folks who are in that condition, but it's saying it's going to be very difficult for them in those days. For there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon the people. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, and looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And then they shall see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. He's called the Son of Man because he is. And he will come as the Son of Man. But in what form he will come, I don't know. Here it says, he will come with power and great glory. We've done a series, and I've just been going through them again, of looking for our wonderful Savior and great God, who will return in glory. And we have postulated the idea of when he comes back, will he have the scars in his hand and on his brow? And I honestly don't know. The Bible is not clear on it. It doesn't say so. When it says they shall look on him whom they pierced, it doesn't say they'll look on the pierce marks. It says they'll look on him who they pierced. They will recognize that the one who returns is the same one that they pierced. I cannot see how, after 2,000 plus years, he will still carry the nail marks in his hands, or the marks of the thorns upon his brow. As we sang here some time ago, the head that once was crowned with thorns is crowned with glory now. It's different. And he'll come back differently. He will come back, and it will be a glorious return. And they shall see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. And he spake to them a parable. Behold, the fig tree and all the trees, when they now shoot forth, you see and know of your own selves that summer is nigh. So he's saying basically, when you see these things happening, know that it's about to take place. Back in verse 25, and there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon. Well, we've seen some of that, haven't we? Is that part of this fulfillment? I wouldn't like to dismiss it as not being a part of the fulfillment, but I don't know. And in the stars, and then this expression, and upon the earth distress of nations. Well, that's for sure. And then it says, with perplexity. And in the Greek, that suggests that there's no way out. Humankind has reached an impasse. And unfortunately, they cannot say, God is our refuge. And I think that it will happen where the nations of this world will be so perplexed, they will not know what to do. We're fast getting there. With the United Nations and the United States of America vying for dominance, and Russia lurking in the shadows, where will the answer come from? There's only one. And so this applies to the end times as well. And then the second Selah. This psalm which we are considering, it says there is a refuge. But first of all, it says there is a river. And yet the amazing thing is, in Jerusalem, you won't find a river. There is no river in Jerusalem. There might be some subterranean water, but there is no open river. There's a brook, the brook Kedron. But there is no river. And yet the psalmist says there is a river. There is a divine supply. Not only is there a protection, but there is a divine supply. And look back at that Psalm 46 for a moment. If I can find it here quickly. There is a river, verse 4. The streams whereof make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacles of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God shall help her, and that right early. The heathen raged. The kingdoms were moved. He uttered his voice. the earth melted, the Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Think on those things. And the interesting thing is that this word refuge, which is linked to the river, is a different word from the word refuge in verse 1. The Authorized Version translates it has the same sort of idea, but it translates it defense, a high tower, a high fort. It is the word Misgab, which was a place in Moab, which was a high place. It's a high place. It's a refuge. You are secure at a height. It's a stronghold. It's the refuge of God. Because of the river of God's provision and God's blessing, there are times even in our disappointments and our trouble when God Almighty can lift us to the high place of refuge. I've known it many times. How about you? When everything seems to be collapsing in on you and you don't know where to turn, God becomes the refuge in the midst of the river of blessing. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Now, those who have been rescued are able to sing a song. I'd like us to be able to sing it. Maybe we won't be ready this morning, but who knows? Hear my cry, O God. Attend unto my prayer. From the ends of the earth will I cry unto thee. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I, that is higher than I. For you have been a shelter for me and a strong tower from the enemy. There's a modern one that doesn't sound nearly as good as the old one. And then you repeat it. You sing it over again. Hear my cry, O God. Attend unto my prayer. From the ends of the earth will I cry unto thee. Come on, if you can help me. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I, that is higher than I. For you have been a shelter for me and a strong tower from the enemy. Hear my cry, O God. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I, that is higher than I. It's good to have some fish that can climb trees. The second Selah. Again, pause and think. Psalm 46, 4-6. There is a river, the streams whereof shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacles of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God shall help her. And that right early. Where God is, there's always a river. There's always a river of blessing. There's always a river of supply. Even though you may look in vain for one in Jerusalem, there is a river there. It's the river of God's making, the river of God's provision. The heathen raged, the kingdoms were moved. He uttered his voice. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. The third cause for reflection. Psalm 46, 8 to 11. Come, behold the works of God, what desolations he has made in the earth. He makes war to cease unto the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and cuts the spear in sunder. He burns the chariot in the fire. Our God is a mighty man of war. And ultimately in the great battle, final battle, the Armageddon, that we must be very fast approaching. The God who makes desolations, who makes wars to cease unto the end of the earth, will move out again and break the bow and cut the spear in sunder and burn the chariots in fire. So, in the light of this, be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our high tower, the one who lifts us up so that we triumph in all circumstances. And I thought maybe as we approach our AGM and look forward to the future, and we just felt to stand still, to let God be God. That doesn't mean that things will remain at the status quo. Certain changes will take place during the next period of review. But for the present, we just hold firm, hold steady, and allow the Lord to be the Lord. Allow God to work in us as a fellowship. I think this fellowship is not the same as all fellowships, and many of us come from, different backgrounds. I come from different background, and things were done differently, very sort of cut and dried and streamlined and all the rest of it. And I think there is a tendency for us to try and reintroduce some of those things and think, well, that's all we know, that's the way it works, and so on. But really, if you think of the 12, or is it 13 years now, that we have been going since our formation, when we started with a handful, and there hasn't been any great organization. There hasn't been a lot of planning. I don't think we are unorganized, but it's not the way it usually is. And even with regard to ministry and the future ministry, it's so easy for us to fall back into a groove and judge on the basis of what we've experienced before, and we forget that led to a lot of disillusionment and a lot of trouble. So let us take a word of encouragement and a word of exhortation and a word of challenge. Let us allow God to do what he wants to do with us. We don't know how long we've got in this property. At this point in time, we only have a guarantee of 12 months from this coming August. But we're not getting into a flap about it. If the Lord points us in a another direction clearly and definitely, well, we'll go. I am obviously coming to the end of my, at least, as much as I have been doing in the past. I can't do it now. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Be still and know that I am God. We pray, Lord, that your peace and your grace will rest upon us. We pray that you will help us to reflect on all that we have heard this morning, marvelous psalms that have been read to us. And now this particular psalm, which we have tried to expound, though possibly not very ably. But we pray, Lord, that you will give us insight and you will help us to realize that you are indeed a refuge and you indeed have provided a river and you are our high tower. Blessed be your wonderful name. And by your grace, we will look to you, we will trust in you, and we will see the salvation of the Lord. Praise your name.